see everybody on the screen. We do have one question or one request for an excused absence from Ken Carper. Is there a motion to approve that excused absence? Sounds good. I got Evan. Is there a second? I think Jermond. All in favor? All right, that one's approved unanimously. Any questions or comments, revisions for the minutes from our January meeting? Doesn't look like it. All right, is there a motion to approve? Mark Sr. and a second from Mr. Taylor. All in favor? All right, minutes are approved unanimously. Thank you all. And Wayne, I think we'll hand it over to you to get us updated on hot topics and staff updates.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. First thing I want to mention is I am sad to announce that Tappan Vickery will not be able to continue to her next term. And I want to express our sincere appreciation for all of the guidance, service, input that Ms. Vickery has provided to us. I understand you're moving in the not too distant future.
Yes, thank you, Wayne. I appreciate it. My husband got laid off because of COVID, but then wound up getting a phenomenal job opportunity shepherding in Dominion Energy's new green energy program in Virginia. So we'll be moving to Richmond.
Well, good. Well, congratulations on the new opportunity for your family, and hope the relocation goes well.
Thank you. We're very sad, but also excited.
Well, we're sad to lose you, but again, I do want to express our appreciation for all your input. You have not been officially replaced, so please continue to participate as you are willing and able. You are still officially on the commission until officially replaced by council. I did see at this past Tuesday's council meeting, there was one nomination for a replacement that was made by the council, but it still has not been officially appointed. A new person has not been officially appointed yet. Next item, moving on to high priority topics. We have had a couple of virtual meetings related to the Upper Durant Lake project. And this is and I'll turn it over to you, Kevin, in just a minute, but I want to kind of set the stage a little bit here. This is really the first test of the revised lake management policy that you all recommended to council, that was approved by council. And so that policy, as you recall, includes public engagement processes as part of any decisions related to lakes within the city's jurisdiction. And then in particular, if the recommendation is to do something other than a lake, it would come to SMAC. And then if you agree that a lake would be turned into something else, a wetland or a stream restoration, then that would go to council for final approval. And that's consistent with the revised policy. So I'll turn it over to Kevin. He is working closely with Parks Rec and Cultural Resources group on the virtual meetings, and this is very much a joint project with them since it's in their Durant Nature Preserve. Kevin, quick update on that.
Sure, thanks, Wayne. I think your intro and the words in the agenda pretty much say it, but I'll hit some key points. We've had two virtual public meetings that went real well. Reasonably well attended. I had 25 or so each time with some good questions and discussion. Our next meeting will be on the 18th with an information item to the Parks Board on the alternatives that have been evaluated without recommendation for feedback input from the Parks Board. And then we'll come back to the commission on March 4th with a recommendation. in addition to the information. And if that recommendation, as Wayne said, is for a use of the lake area, something other than open water lake, then that would go to City Council sometime thereafter. So look forward to that on your agenda for March.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And would you cover the next one too, the NPDS, the MS4 Stormwater Management Plan public comment process?
Glad to. As part of our obligation and requirements under our stormwater permit with NCDEQ, we have a stormwater management plan that needs to be updated per the permit at least once every 5-year cycle. We just drafted that plan, and we have put it out for public comment on the website. I think we made you aware of that at last month's meeting. It went on the website on January 9th, and the public comment period will end tomorrow, February 5th. We've used social media, website, news, email, marketing to spread the word that it's out there. And as of yesterday, we had over 117 total views and 13 comments. Only a handful, 4 or so, are directly irrelevant to the plan itself, as opposed to broader comments about stormwater management, and having to do with more frequent updates of the plan, being more visible or transparent about what has changed in the plan, which is a very good observation, and advertising it that it exists on our hotline. That is, if you call in with a notice for something on our hotline, then you get a notice that the stormwater management plan is out for review. All good suggestions. We'll be taking all comments, and we'll respond to each one of them with the help of our communications department. And to the extent they warrant changes to the plan, we'll make those changes. But in any case, finalize the plan in the coming weeks and submit that to NCDEQ for approval, and that will be our guide for how we administer the NPDES aspects of our program. Thanks, Wayne. Oh, and you have, the public comment period is open for another day. Of course, we'll listen to your comments if you have them after tomorrow, but be aware that the official comment period ends tomorrow.
Great. Any questions for Kevin on either of those items before I move on? Okay, seeing none. The next item, liaison between the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission and the Planning Commission. This was a proposal that originated from council. I mentioned this at a previous meeting, and then I believe Mr. Kane, you had asked about it in January, and we followed up with the planning department, and they are very much on board with the idea, and are bringing the idea to the Planning Commission for nomination of a liaison from their side, and asked me to bring it to you to select a liaison from this commission that would then work with the liaison from the Planning Commission, as well as myself and Travis Crane, who is essentially the same role I play. But he's the liaison with the Planning Commission, and had some suggestions of what that role might look like in the email text, but it's still yet to be developed for sure, and would like to throw this out to you all in terms of a process. One suggestion might be, and I'm going to just jump to the next item, next month is the normal annual election of officers for the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission. It may make sense to just roll this liaison process into the same nomination and selection process for next month, if that makes sense to you all. But again, that's just a suggestion, and there's there's no precedent for this role. So however you all would like to go through, and ideally it would be a self-selection process by the commission itself, as are the election of the officers.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense to do it next month when we're electing officers. Anybody have any objection to that or would like more time? All right, sounds good. And if anyone does have particular interest in that liaison role with the Planning Commission, please let us know and make sure try to put it together.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention that I am interested in the liaison role to the Planning Commission.
Great, that sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Stansel. Anybody else have interest in that, or could be pretty straightforward. That sounds good. We'll keep that in mind, and I think we'll take care of nominations next month when we do officers.
Great, thank you. And one last item I have Carmela Teichman with us today, and I'd like for Carmela, as those of you who have been on the commission recall, helps us with the Capture It Student Art Contest and is our public outreach specialist. So I'm going to ask Carmela to give you a little bit of an update for how we're going to do the contest this year, since we're working virtually. Carmela?
Thanks, Wayne. Hey, everyone. Hello, Mr. Stansel. Since you're new, I'm Carmela, like Wayne said, and I've been with Stormwater about 16 years. So I know a lot of people around there. But anyways, our Capture It contest, just to give you a real quick background, is for 8th grade through 12th grade students. It's an art contest. They provide a video or a piece of artwork where they speak to stormwater and the harmful effects it has in our water bodies. So the contest this year opened in November. It closes on February 26th. And as in past years, SMAC members, the commission, have graciously acted as our grand jury. It's a little more involved in previous years because it was live and we were under the EAB and the Environmental Awards program. This year we are standalone, so it's a little more streamlined, but we will be having our internal jury coming up next month in March, and then we would like to bring the top 4 or 6 entries to SMAC in the April meeting. We're working on specifics and going to have a trial run of how we're going to actually present those to you all for your voting. And hopefully we're going to have a lot of students participating, since this is a very work on your own type assignment. And so we're looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thanks, Carmela. And I guess the notifications will go out as part of our Earth Day campaign later in April. Then it's the plan, I believe, right? And possibly, yes, if there is an environmental awards in the fall that is rescheduled, we would participate in that as well.
Correct. So hopefully there will be, if things get settled down here with this pandemic. So we're looking forward to that as well. And we'll get everything to Wayne so he can pass it on to you all as we work out the details of the voting and doing it virtually, and the guidelines, so on and so forth, so that you'll have that before voting. But as always, thank you so much for agreeing to help with this and for your support in doing this always. Thank you.
Thanks, Carmela. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, that's all we have to report at this time.
Great. Thank you, Wayne. Kevin, it looks like we're back over to you for some updates on the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards Program and how to think about the green roofs.
Thank you. Kelly, would you send control my way? Thanks. Okay, is my PowerPoint up? Everybody see the PowerPoint screen with the
Yes.
Walnut Creek Wetland Center Park? Okay.
Yes, we got you, Kevin.
Okay, thanks. Let me move some things around here. Okay, well, recall that it's at several previous commission meetings. Commission members expressed some concern about the relatively high cost, specifically high cost per pound of nitrogen removed for green roof projects under consideration and frankly, past approved green roof projects, and suggested that we take a look at some ways of changing our procedures for considering them and approving them, among them perhaps capping, in some way capping the cost to bring the cost of green roof projects more in line with other types of projects selected under the Rainwater Rewards Program. So I'm going to cover these topics today. I'm going to go over the Rainwater Rewards Program broadly because some of you have worked within it, but without necessarily knowing what it's all about, probably. And there's some newer members who can benefit from that. Then I'll move on to how we approach nitrogen as the benefit part of the cost benefit metric for comparing projects, and then get into the real substance of some options for capping the city's cost share to projects based on the cost, the nitrogen cost benefit metric for green roof projects, but for any kind of projects. So starting off with the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards Program, its official name is really the Stormwater Quality Cost Share Program because it's the name of the policy under which we operate. It's been branded or nicknamed Raleigh Rainwater Rewards for public facing. And it reimburses either usually 75 or 90% of costs for water quality projects on the property of the applicant. And its whole purpose is to encourage property owners to voluntarily help protect runoff to our streams and lakes. And in recent years, or over the 10-year history really, it's been funded at varying levels from $50,000 to $250,000 per year. And that's roughly in the range of 1% to 3% of our overall CIP budget, just depending on the mix of this program's funding and the overall CIP. To be eligible, simply have to be paying a stormwater fee, which is just about every property, frankly. And the projects have to be above and beyond regulations. That is not required by our code or UDO. We must have the funds available, and we've fortunately generally not run out of funds or been able to augment the funds from other sources when we have run out. And whatever is implemented must be feasible and practical, and that's the judgment made on the part of staff and also the commission when it comes to the commission or the city council. The map you see here is in green is the areas of the city that are eligible for 75% reimbursement. That's roughly, I'll say, 5/6 of the city, and the other 1/6 is a 90% eligibility reimbursement area. And that's 5 areas. And these were given priority because this is where we want to encourage projects more than in other areas. And these are two watersheds that are called TMDL. I won't get into what that means right now, but one of them is Perry Creek up here in Northwest. Another is Pigeon House Branch right in central downtown and north. And then two water supply watershed areas, which are really slivers, that is, of the city limits, the city area of the city, just barely intersect with these watershed areas of Falls Lake, and down here with Swift Creek water supply watershed. And then a fifth priority area is the downtown area. And the reason for making that a priority is that existing impervious surfaces are what we call grandfathered, and so if they are redeveloped, there is not a requirement. In fact, we're prohibited from having a requirement by state statute. They're not required to treat stormwater any more than they already were. If they weren't treating it at all, that means none. So we're hoping that downtown redevelopment can benefit with some voluntary stormwater treatment through this program. We've not seen a great deal of interest in the core of downtown, on some of the fringes, Oakwood area and that sort of thing. We have had some rain gardens, but not on the large downtown redevelopment. We're hoping to break through on that someday. These two maps are, kind of a measle look to them. They're related. On the left are areas within the last couple of years, or locations within the last couple of years, that our staff, primarily Justin Harcum, has visited in response to calls or emails or other requests for being considered for the program. There are hundreds of locations, hundreds of visits that have been made. Some of them turn into applications. Some of them don't. Some of them should. Some of them shouldn't. And Justin is very adept at helping the property owners screen and decide whether they should move forward, and then he helps them apply. And that's why you see well-vetted applications when they come to you. The map on the right is, and this one is on our website. It's you can go look at it. It's all the projects have been approved, 118 or so, since the program has existed, color coded by project type. And if you click on any one of them, it will pop up and tell you not the address, but the block. We don't want to give people's addresses, but the block where it's located and the type of project it is, just so you get a sense of what's out there. This is just a clip from the policy under which we operated, the authority under which we operate from City Council. There was a typo or mistake in the memo we sent out. It said it's the latest version was 2015. That's not right. It was the date was right, but the year was wrong. It's 2018 is the latest version. And the reason for putting this up is to point out that under the whereas statement, it gives some important information about why this program is even warranted. And that's because we have a mandate to reduce pollutants in stormwater to the maximum extent practical, which is the term that's used in our permit. Again, the watersheds of Perry Creek and Pigeon House Branch are prominent because of their regulatory status, and that's why they have a higher percent funding from the city. And retrofits are mandated under our NPDES permit and under our rules under the Neuse River Nutrient Sensitive Watershed strategy, which is driven primarily by nitrogen. We're talking about nitrogen. Policy is what we operate under. Now I'm going to run through just a lot of photos real quick, just to show you some of the projects that have been approved and constructed. On the left is a residential rain garden. On the right is a church parking lot, bioretention, rain garden at Peace University, residential cistern, residential green roof, parking lot bioretention, green roof at Raleigh Union Station, residential permeable pavers, cistern at Walnut Creek Wetland Park, bioretention at Raleigh Union Station. Okay, and the benefits of these projects are multiple, but a large one is they contribute to an important one, they contribute to our compliance with our permit, in particular those TMDL watersheds of Perry Creek and Houston House Branch. Some of the benefits are quantifiable: reduce pollution, pollutants, nitrogen in particular we'll be talking about, but also stormwater runoff volume and stormwater runoff peak rate. And there are the numbers that we count as well, just the numbers of projects as you saw on the map. But non-quantifiable benefits are the public education and awareness that these projects bring, reinvestment in the community, and then I say reinvestment in that our ratepayers, our stormwater fee payers invest in us, and we reinvest some of that back in the community through these projects. There are also demonstrations of what can be done and what we'd like to see more of for treating water before it reaches our streams, and it does foster partnerships with residents and the community at large. Most of you have seen this chart before, but it's been updated. It shows one way of showing the growth of the program, both in the numbers across the top, but also just the numbers of projects and the amounts of the of city funding to projects over time. And here in FY21, which we're a little over halfway through, we're pretty much on track to meet or exceed what we did last year in terms of number of projects and dollar amounts. You can see that over the last several years, we've been funding of over $250,000 projects, and you'll see this quarterly with the quarterly update that we provide. Looking at sort of a breakout of the types of projects and the numbers that go with that, we're starting into the numbers part now. You can see that cisterns and bioretentions, and those of you who've seen projects come through know those are the most popular, followed by what we sometimes call depaving or impervious surface removal, and then permeable pavers, and what we're here talking about today is green roofs. So you can see the percent by projects, number of projects. You can see the percent by city funds expended on each project type. And so, green roofs, 3% and 18%. That can be because the projects are large or because the projects are expensive. It's, numbers can tell different stories, especially when you look over to the far right. With these kinds of ranges in projects, averages maybe aren't that meaningful, but it's a starting point. So that's where we are today. Okay, now I'll move on to use of nitrogen as the benefit, part of the cost benefit metric that we use to compare projects. There are many benefits to stormwater treatment measures. Removal of pollutants, removal of nitrogen is just one. We wanted to keep it simple for how we screen projects. It's not a large program. We didn't want a weighty scoring system. We selected that years ago as our metric for comparing. Yes, and here's where it comes from, how we build it up. For the project site, we look at the types of surfaces that are contributing runoff to the treatment system, and what are the, basically the square footage of each. So obviously the more there is, the more runoff there'll be, but then the type also matters, where, pavement is going to generate more runoff and more pollution than say lawns. And for those of you who hadn't thought about it or don't know, the nitrogen that comes from roofs and pavements is largely from atmospheric fallout from the burning of fossil fuels in our area, primarily from motor vehicles. In other areas, it might be from coal-fired power plants or from industry, but it comes out of the sky. And so even if there's no activity on the land, there is nitrogen running off. And then that goes to a type of treatment feature, and whether it's a rain garden or a green roof, permeable pavers, and each of those has an assigned treatment efficiency in a state manual that we refer to. So now we've got the amount of water coming, the amount of nitrogen in the water, and how much comes out or is reduced or removed by the treatment. And then that's on a per unit time basis. And then to get the total over the life of the project, or the life that we want to consider, usually 5 or 10 years for our projects, because that's what we have in program and in our agreements with the property owners. That string of calculations gives us a total pounds per nitrogen for the life of the project. Okay, so moving on to now applying that that benefit part to the excuse me, I modify my screen here. Applying that benefit into a cost-benefit ratio. The cost is obvious. We have that as proposed by the property owner and approved by staff, the commission, or city council. And so it's a simple division or a ratio. And these are the averages for the project types that I've already talked about. And these are repeating the number of projects approved. Now for this exercise, we've included the 2 pending project applications in this average. Also, I want to point out that for permeable pavers, we made a change in the policy several years ago that in 2015, that the program would recognize for reimbursement purposes, or what we came to call acceptable cost, only that part of the pavement or paver that makes the pavement permeable. We do that by subtracting off what we believe is a reasonable allowance for what a conventional pavement would cost. We use $5 per square foot for that. So a lot of the projects, or excuse me, 3 of the projects, yes, I believe it was 3 projects were approved before that change was made, which makes the number for permeable pavers look pretty high. That won't happen again because we have the new policy now.
Did we lose Kevin?
Yeah, it seems I just see sort of a backdrop of a computer screen there.
Is Justin still with us? Or Kelly, do you have Kevin's presentation by chance?
No, Kevin lost internet, so he's trying to get back on.
Okay.
He's been completely kicked off.
Okay, we'll give him a minute. I'll fill in the gap here just a little bit to give a preview. So I think Kevin did a good job giving the background of where the program's been. To recap the question that was asked by the commission for staff to bring back was specifically related around green roofs, because they are looking to be a
Is your battery plugged in?
Yeah.
looks like maybe Kevin's coming back, but his battery's low. Are you back, Kevin?
Yeah, I thought I was plugged in, but I guess I'm not.
Oh, okay. You back then?
It appears I am. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we see it.
Okay.
Go ahead and pick up. I was filling in the gap a little bit, but I don't think I added a whole lot. So go ahead and pick up where you were.
Okay. Let me pick up then, since you can see my screen. I was saying that the green roofs, if you remove the projects from the past before the policy change was made, that averages 3,842. So it's more in line with some of the other project types. Moving on. Now I'm going to be talking about capping of the city's cost share using the nitrogen metric, and I'm going to change to a spreadsheet here. Okay, how do I get back to my menu of? Oh, I know. Never mind. Okay, are you seeing a spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is a spreadsheet that you see quarterly, at least. Hold on for me just a second. Well, I'll keep going.
Okay.
You see quarterly with Justin Harcum's quarterly update. We have reformatted it, though, for this purpose and extended it with some analysis. So I'm going to walk you through. There are a lot of numbers, but I promise you there's no math. That's all been done behind the Excel here. So we'll start with permeable paver projects, and I mentioned those are the 3 projects that were approved before the policy change. But what we have here is the figures for the projects as approved, and then what we have looked at is caps on past projects. What would have happened to those projects had they been capped at $7,000 per pound of nitrogen, or at $6,000 per pound of nitrogen. And we picked those just by examining the numbers that we were working with. And you can see here that for the permeable paver projects, 2 of them would be affected by the $7,000 cap, 3 of them by the $6,000 cap. Okay, and what we have here is the adjusted amount, which is $7,000 per pound multiplied by the number of pounds. That's $15,000. And then the adjusted city share would be the percentage of that number that was part of the previous award, and that was 75%. So there's the pardon me a second. Thank you. All right, we're back in business. And so this number is 75% of that number. This adjusted city share is this by percent is the adjusted city share by in dollars divided by the original total project amount. So effectively now the city would be contributing 38% instead of 75%. And the difference between what the city would have did contribute and would contribute with this cap is that number. I know that's a lot. So the city would be contributing $11,522 less with this cap if this project, same project came through today. Likewise for the next project, likewise for the $6,000 cap here. So you can see that here only the projects that were approved before the policy change came through would be affected by the cap for permeable pavers projects. Okay, so I'll now move down to the other categories. I'll skip over green roofs because I'm coming back to that because that's why we're here. Looking at cisterns, and there are 39 of those, so a lot of projects. One thing I didn't mention is that now These are grouped by maintenance term or project life, 10 years. They're also 5 years. So for the 10-year projects for cisterns, none of them would be touched by the $7,000 cap. As you can see, they're all below $7,000 a year. And 2 would be touched by the $6,000 cap to this extent. $1,300 or so, which is, looking like what, 10 or 15% of the adjusted cost. Not an insignificant amount, but also not real large. But going down to the 5-year projects, more would be touched because their cost per pound is less because they don't have too many years of operation. Had they been 10-year projects, they would have a better cost per pound. But 4 would be touched to pretty small dollar amounts for the $7,000 cap, and a few more for the $6,000 cap. Going down to bioretention cells, there are 49 of those for the 10-year projects. Only 2 of them would be touched. None of them would be touched by the $7,000 cap. 2 would be touched by a relatively small amount by the $7,000 cap. And then for the 5-year projects in the same category, we have these 5 that would be touched to this extent, a fairly small amount by the $7,000 cap, and a few more over here by the $6,000 cap up in the $2,000 and $3,000 area. Moving down to the next category. None of the impervious surface removal projects would be touched. They have pretty low cost per pound. There's a very, very efficient or very good cost benefit ratios for these projects. Likewise, for the only silver cell that we funded, it would not be touched by either cap. Okay. Now I'll go back to the PowerPoint presentation now. Okay, so here's a wrap up of what, I'm sorry. Let me go back to my Excel sheet here. Forgot to go back to green roofs. Okay, so 4 green roofs have been approved, 2 are pending, and the pending projects are in green font and shade here.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Yes.
Quick question. I'm sorry, I apologize if I missed it the first time. On the permeable pavers, were the projects there in the table, were any of those that would be affected by a cap? Did those predate the policy change of the 2015 policy change?
All 3 that would be affected by either cap were pre-policy change. Okay. That's correct. Thanks. So we would not see applications like those in the future.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so as expected, all of the green roof projects would be touched by the both caps, and to this extent, a pretty substantial amount, as you can see here. This top one is the green roof at Raleigh Union Station. This one is the green roof at the city's Buffalo Road Aquatic Center. This is a pending project at P Street, the Publix, and this is a pending project at Mill Street, the residence. And I wanted to point out that one green roof project would not be touched by the $7,000 cap, and that's a previously approved residential project on Plainview. So I'm back in the PowerPoint presentation. And this is a roll-up of the green roof projects that I just went over. It summarizes the difference in what the city's share would be versus the hypothetical cases of the two caps. It's just all in one place and in larger font for you to see. And these two projects you'll be seeing shortly from Justin Harcum. Looking at the other types of projects, this is in your memo. This just summarizes from the memo how many of each type of project would be touched. 2 of 9, 3 of 9. All those touched though would be pre-policy change. Cisterns touched, but only fairly lightly, and by retention touched, but fairly lightly, and then impervious surface removals and silver cells not touched at all. Okay, so that's the prepared presentation, and ready for any questions or discussion and your thoughts or guidance for where we might take this.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Are there any questions for Kevin right now? Really appreciate the presentation, Kevin. That was very helpful.
Thank you.
Kevin, there is a question. Mark typed in the chat. Could you clarify how the years of maintenance affect the cost per pound? Mark's having audio problems.
Sure. Yes, the longer the life of the project, actually the longer the commitment to the life of the project, we hope the owners will operate them long after their commitment of 5 or 10 years. But the longer the period that we consider in our calculation, the more nitrogen is removed. And so for the same system, same device, twice as much would be removed in 10 years as in 5.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mark.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I guess I gotta turn my audio down here. I guess I was a little confused on that, or questioning that. I mean, I think these devices keep working after that maintenance period is gone, but I guess we have to have some sort of a cutoff somewhere.
Exactly, and it's the life we can count on. That is, they have no obligation to us to keep it up. We would hope they would. They've invested their own money in it. We've invested ours, but we've justified to ourselves through our policy that we've gotten our return on our investment after that period. And although we would hope it would go on, as you're suggesting.
And I guess another way of looking at that is if somebody wants to bump up their pounds of nitrogen per cost, they can agree to a longer maintenance term, and it makes the project look better.
They could. They don't at the time have a good point, but for the most part, it hasn't been an issue until now. And almost, I think all of the green roof projects were 10-year projects already. We've never had any reason to consider a period of longer than 10 years because that's simply what the policy says.
I mean, I think you presented some great numbers. You know, my thinking is that we probably need to put some sort of cap on there, and it makes sense to me to make it across the board for all the different types of devices we allow. But, you know, it's obviously something that's needed for the green roofs due to and usually exceptionally high cost per pound of nitrogen removed.
Yes, and of course, we could go through this exercise for any cap. We just pick those two as looking reasonable, although we're not making a recommendation. We started with the 7,000 cap and just it looked good to us and decided to show you the difference it would make to bump that a little bit down to just a more stringent cap.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say thanks also, Kevin. This was a very helpful presentation, review of the policies, and I would, like Mark, be in favor of a cap, probably at the $7,000 per pound of nitrogen, and agree it should be across the board for all projects. I think the data you've compiled here shows that $7,000 per pound cap is attainable by most of the projects we see. And I think that would be a nice backstop against throwing, really exorbitant amounts at some of these projects.
Thanks, Evan. Are there any other thoughts or comments from other members of the commission at this time on the cap, or perhaps where the cap should be? Yeah, go ahead, Evan.
I have another comment, not so much about the cap, but just some thoughts on the policy that was spurred by this review. So I can hold those back for a moment if you like.
It doesn't look like we've got any other thoughts on the cap at this point. One question I do have for Kevin and Wayne. The next steps on this, would you guys need to go back and take a look at how the cap would affect other practices, and then we'd have, or other types of SCMs that are used as part of the Rainwater Rewards program, and then we'd review that and kind of begin that policy change, or what do the next steps look like for adding the cap to the program?
Yeah, that's a good question for next steps. We did give that a good bit of thought and are of the opinion, and I don't think we need to get a legal opinion on this, is that we can cover this within staff's latitude or authority under what we call our judgment about acceptable costs, what we consider to be an acceptable cost. We can incorporate that into our own practices or call it a policy, not the formal city council policy, just as an administrative part of what we do. That being the case, I don't know exactly, Wayne, please weigh in here, how a vote or a motion by the commission might be framed, but I'm thinking it would be in the context of a recommendation to staff to incorporate that into our practices for interpreting acceptable costs.
I think it would be helpful to have a motion.
And John, did that address your question?
Yeah, did I hear you saying that you think it'd be helpful to have a motion to that effect?
Yeah, that was Wayne. I do think it would be helpful to have a motion to make a formal recommendation that the staff consider a cap in terms of evaluating the acceptable costs of these projects. I would suggest not putting the number in the motion unless you wanted to, but we could bring that back informally as a cap, and then as we move forward, if we needed to adjust that slightly for inflation or other types of issues, we could do that. But that would be a part of our presentation every time moving forward if the commission would like for us to do that.
I mean, I'm comfortable making a motion if we want that we request staff to review those costs and come back with a recommendation on some sort of a cap for the board to consider, or the commission to consider. So you mean,
Evan, I think you had one more comment on that.
I was going to offer support for a motion.
Okay. That sounds good. Well then, is there a motion for that cap? And would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
Can I just clarify that, Kevin, what you were suggesting was that staff present a cap along with future rainwater rewards proposals and present those proposals with that cap as a point of comparison, or were you proposing that the staff actually develop the cap?
Well, a reminder that some of the applications are approved on the staff level. That is, they don't all come through the commission, to the commission. And we would, you know, if with that recommendation from the commission, we would apply that same cap to staff level approvals.
Okay.
I don't know if that got to your question, but might affect the question.
Okay. I would make a motion then that the staff come back to the SMAC with a recommended cap for approval of rainwater rewards applications.
Thanks, Evan. Is there a second for that motion? I got Mark Sr. on a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Don't see any opposed, so that motion passes unanimously.
Yeah, I didn't hold up my hand in favor, but you.
So this is Wayne, just to clarify then, moving forward, you know, our suggestion right now would be to apply the, I believe, the $7,000 cap. And as we move forward, bringing projects, would you like us to bring that cap back on a project by project basis based on 7,000 and only suggest a change if there was something special that warranted a change from that at some point in the future? Is that a fair interpretation of what the commission is recommending?
I think that's okay by me.
Yeah, so Wayne, are you saying basically the city's cost share will be presented with the $7,000 cap when projects come through for approval?
Correct. That's what I'm suggesting is our interpretation of the direction that we're getting, just for clarification purposes.
I would like to amend that a little bit. The cap was developed based on total project cost, and then the city's share would be the percent by location applied to that. So it would be, you know, the $7,000 cap times pounds of nitrogen to get the total project cost, and then the city's share would be 75% or 90% of that. Is that making sense?
Yep, that makes sense to me. All right, any other comments? Yeah, go ahead, Evan.
Okay, I just wanted to make a broader policy observation and suggestion in terms of the cost share policy. The opportunity to review that cost share policy and look into the background was really good, and I appreciate the links to that. I noticed in going through that, what I think has been obvious is that all the priorities in the cost share policy are water quality based. There's nothing wrong with that, but as I've been looking at the Rainwater Rewards program, I've been wrestling with the idea of reinvesting public money on private land that generally belongs to people of means. Meanwhile, we have people of less means, and especially people who've historically been disenfranchised and have suffered environmental injustices related to stormwater runoff, are generally unable to take advantage of this program. I would like to, in some future meetings, explore how we can incorporate environmental justice as a priority in stormwater cost share programs and possibly even drainage assistance or even other aspects of the stormwater program. Perhaps by recognizing historically redlined areas or using more current data in the county's social equity atlas, but in a way that encourages participation and reinvestment in longtime residents of those communities, as opposed to fostering gentrification and flipping, things like that. I'd be interested in hearing any other commissioners who have thoughts on that matter, pro or con.
Evan, I certainly support what you said. As you were talking, you used the term equity, and certainly equity came to mind. It's certainly one thing to think in terms of raw numbers and those technical aspects. And we have to acknowledge that the reality can be different based on location. And so bringing some type of historical context, equitable consideration, I would certainly be, I would support conversation around that and actually having something that we can measure as we decide on these projects.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Jermon. Any other thoughts on that from commission members at this point?
I would just say that I also really support the idea of putting equity into the process there, and it's something that's heavy on my mind when we look at our aging infrastructure and where people are most impacted across Raleigh.
Can you guys hear me now? Okay, I'm having speaker issues or microphone issues. I mean, I kind of support the idea, but I guess I'm struggling with how we would accomplish that. I mean, maybe there's a lot smarter people within the city that can figure out a metric for accomplishing that goal. I'd be interested to see how we might do that without making it overly complex for staff to try to incorporate that.
And Mark, I think that's a valid concern. As I go about my job as a water professional, I run into issues of community planning, of equity and things like that, and recognize that my skill set is not there. And so I would encourage us and the city's stormwater staff to reach out to people in other departments, other agencies, to bring in those types of perspectives on how that type of equity measure can be identified and incorporated into these processes. Because I think around this table we have a lot of folks who are water quality experts, and that's very good expertise. And I recognize my own shortcomings in being able to point to a specific equity variable or even process that captures what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think it's a point of history. I think the drainage assistance program ran into the same exact issue where, people of means could get their drainage problems fixed because it was a cost share program, whereas lower income people or people on fixed incomes could not afford to get their problems fixed. And that's one of the justifications for the city to move forward towards funding those kinds of projects 100%. So we may be facing that same dilemma. Maybe we can come up with a good solution.
Yeah, and I recognize that these cost share programs, this cost share program is intended as an incentive for people to go above and beyond requirements, which is really different from, fixing a pipe that is sending a jet of stormwater at your house foundation. And so different approaches would certainly be called for here.
Yes, so perhaps is there an opportunity for an agenda item in an upcoming meeting with some ideas that could start at the staff level and have more discussion around that and how it might be part of the programs?
We'd be glad to do that. And we are already working with the city's Office of Equity and Inclusion on some other issues, including the floodplain regulations, and are interacting with them regularly. So this would be a good opportunity to bring them into this discussion and get their input as well. We'd be glad to bring that back in the future.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks for indulging me there.
All right, so I think at this point we are going to move over to Justin Harkham's presentation, revisiting the green roof projects.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan. A couple of ways we can do this, and I know Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for doing such a bang-up job on representing the program and walking through the numbers that are always hidden in the background of this program. So we have the two green roofs that were presented in November and December. I can kind of quickly move through these based on the recommendation. If I understand it correctly, the recommendation to staff is to apply a $7,000 cap. And so we can move through these two presentations, and I can show or represent what those numbers would look like with that cap. So next slide, please. All right, we'll start with the Publix green roof off P Street. Once again, in Pigeon House Branch, 90% reimbursement. Next slide, please. And this probably looks familiar to most. Green roofs down on the bottom of your screen there. Next slide. Next slide. Projected costs. The costs were originally reduced from their November from the November presentation. They've also agreed to add some educational signage at the request of the commission. Nothing has changed since the presentation in December. Next slide, please. Water quality considerations are unchanged as well. Next slide, please. You'll notice the green roof education signage location on the north side of that building. Next slide. You'll see this is the comparison slide prior to the cap decision by the commission, which y'all have already seen today. Next slide, please. It'll be subject to the 10-year maintenance period and the land use restriction for the footprint of that green roof. Next slide, please. So really at this point, these projects I'm presenting today will have two different paths. This project will have to be approved, if recommended by the commission, would have to be approved by city council. The next project, the approval authority rests with the commission. So I can move forward to the end so we can look at numbers and then come back and vote. Jonathan, how does that sound?
Yeah, Justin, did I miss what the new, I guess, cost share to the city would be with a $7,000 cap, or are we going to get to that?
We're gonna get to it. I put it at the end. If thinking back, I probably should have put it at the end of each project. But I haven't.
It's okay. I was just curious. Yeah, we can vote for them separately or do votes, yeah, separately at the end when it's time.
Could I just ask, Justin? Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Evan.
Justin, so this project is already completed. And I think your sound is not quite coming through, Justin, but.
Yes, sir, it was completed.
And what was the application when was the application submitted?
Application was submitted last July. At the time, we did not have funding in place. We had to wait a couple months till we moved some stuff around internally till funding came available, and it was brought to, I believe it was the November meeting, and then again to the December meeting.
And when was the project completed?
Within a year, a few months prior to that application, the policy allows for an application to be considered if it's submitted within 1 year of completion.
Thank you.
All right, we can move over to the Mill Street residential green roof. Crabtree Creek, 75% reimbursement eligibility, and it's once again residential property. Next slide, please. Nothing has changed on the design. If you recall, they reduced costs dramatically and then also increased the footprint. So more green roof, less costs after the November meeting. Next slide, please. And you can see that is the adjusted total cost there. Next slide. Water quality considerations. This house is currently under construction. The last time we were here, they were still permitting. So this is under construction at this point. Next slide, please. Same slide as before with the comparison. And 2 more slides, Kelly, please. We'll skip ahead to the breakdown. Next slide, please. There we go. So project costs with the proposed caps. I was unsure if either of these were going to be selected today, but the $7,000 cap was the recommendation to staff, and I can walk through both of these projects. The Peach Street project, the original acceptable cost, which is a term Kevin utilized from the policy, was $65,400, where the city's contribution was going to be $58,850. With the $7,000 cap recommendation from the commission, the new cost for the Peach Street, the new acceptable cost would be $18,600, and then you take 90% of that, which would mean the city's contribution would be $16,737. That's a $42,113 difference from what was proposed in December, what was presented in December. So in summary, this property is requesting with this cap $16,737 in reimbursement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just I just want to make sure I see it correctly. So for the Peace Street project, the city's cost share is the $16,737, and then for the 515 Mill Street, you're looking at $12,600. Do I see that correctly in the table?
That is correct, and it's broken down at the lower right corner. You'll see those numbers in green, and those percentages are the percentages of the original cost. So as opposed to the original eligible 75%, we would be reimbursing 43% and 26% respectively.
Okay, I got you.
Question for you, Justin, on Mill Street. Has that project been started or completed?
They are currently the house is under construction. The green roof has not been installed yet. The future owner of that house is very interested in moving forward with their green roof, and that decision is going to be contingent on that. But obviously the house is being built anyways.
Okay, and we received that application when?
That application was received in September or October.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Justin on either of those 2 projects? All right. Is there interest from commission members to take a vote on either of the 2 green roof projects that were presented again today? Yeah, go ahead, Evan.
I'd like to note that the 417 West Peace Street project was completed prior to the application. And as Justin has noted, the policy allows for reimbursement in that case, but it also leaves to the commission's discretion whether or not to fund those projects. On that basis, I would recommend disapproval of the 417 West Peace Street project.
All right, Evan, was that a motion to?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a motion for disapproval of the Peace Street project. Is there a second on that? All right, I've got Reverend Taylor as a second. All in favor of disapproval? All right, all opposed? All right, I had one opposed. Wayne, did you get that? All right, what about the second project on, is it Mill Street, Justin?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, is there a motion to approve or deny Mill Street from a commission member? Which one is it, Glenn? Approve or deny? What?
Thumbs down. Look, it's, if we want to be consistent, Peace Street is conditionally approved since it is already completed. I think as a homeowner, they should complete their project. Their application should be in the queue, but they should complete their project first. What happens if we approve this? They change their minds, don't even start it. Now you've allocated dollars from our fund to a project that doesn't happen.
I think it's more typical that we would approve the projects prior to construction. Is that correct, Justin?
That is correct, Jonathan. We advocate for that. Any project that starts prior to approval, regardless of cost contribution, would be required to come to the commission for exactly the point that Evan said. It is the commission's discretion. So we do advocate for folks to apply prior to starting a project. And the Mill Street did submit an application prior to approval.
That's not what I'm asking. What I'm saying is, I understand they have to go through an application process to get the project approved. What do we do with an approved project that a builder or a homeowner opts not to start?
Yeah, good question, Glenn. So in the legal agreement, they have a time restriction on project completion. So they have 12 months from the execution of their legal agreement to complete the project, and then 2 additional months from that point to submit all reimbursement paperwork. There is a mechanism to release those encumbered funds.
So there's no earmarking of funds from this program until the project's done.
If I understand you correctly, once a project is approved, that money is encumbered or set aside until the project's completed and presumably reimbursed. If the project does not move forward, that money goes back into the rainwater rewards pot at the end of that timeline.
But if you earmark the money for a project that isn't completed yet, that precludes someone else who has completed a project from, if say our budget runs out, and they have to wait till the following year where there's a new allocation of funds. It delays reimbursement for people who have already, it could potentially delay reimbursement for people who have already completed their projects. If you're earmarking money in the same year of the application. I'm just thinking of how do you fund more projects? And a simple way to do that is you go through the approval process. Yes, we're going to reimburse you if and when you do the project, but we don't have to earmark those dollars or allocate those dollars from the current budget to take care of it if it's not going to be done in 12 or 14 months. It's going into a future budget.
Yeah, go ahead, Evan. I think you had a comment there.
I think that that sounds like it would be a change from the current policy and practice. I would make a motion to approve the Mill Street project with the adjusted reimbursement rates per the $7,000 cap on the basis that they're following the process that we'd like to see. They're applying for the funding before the project is in place, and making their decisions on the basis of the city's willingness to provide this incentive.
And I would second that.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, Wayne, that appeared to be unanimous. I didn't see any hands in opposition on that one.
Yeah, if I could speak to Glenn's points, I mean, I understand where he's coming from on that. I think the problem we run into is twofold. One, people aren't going to be willing to instigate a project like that unless they know they're going to get reimbursed. And the other is the city can't approve something like that without encumbering those funds, from the financial process. The internal auditors won't let them do that. They've got to tag that money as soon as it's approved. I don't think there's a way around that. Wayne may want to weigh in on that.
I agree with your interpretation there, Mark. And it would be difficult for us to approve something based on future funds that we might get next year, since the next fiscal year's budget, we couldn't make commitments toward a future budget either.
Yeah, one other, I guess, kind of comment I'd like to make. I think including the rainwater awards project as part of new construction, that would be, I guess, less common than what most of the other projects are. Would you agree, Justin? Justin, I think you're muted or your volume's not coming through.
Yes, sir, that is correct. That's the correct generalization.
Okay, and just to clarify, if in the event, I mean, I wouldn't see this being an issue, but they couldn't use a green roof, or the homeowner, builder, whoever it is, they could not use a green roof in that scenario to get under a BUA threshold, could they?
Correct in that no part of these funds or any of these projects can be used to meet any stormwater requirements, including, impervious surface limitations. And that is a regular call I get, and a regular part of the vetting process there.
Okay.
John, if I'm to comment on your comment about new construction, yes, it is the exception that these projects are implemented on new construction, but we'd like to see more of that. It just makes sense to incorporate these into projects that are already, disrupting the land and rearranging the landscape, rather than as retrofits where, something that may be functioning well has to be turned into something else functioning a little better.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Any other thoughts or questions, comments for Justin before we move on?
Mr. Chair, so if I could just make one clarification, I think what we're hearing is at this point, for future reviews of rainwater rewards, staff will apply the $7,000 cap and bring those projects back with any recommendations based on that cap for the foreseeable future, unless the commission gives us other guidance, or unless there's a special circumstance that we see that may require a different cap. Is that a good clarification summary of the guidance we're getting?
Yes, I think so, Wayne.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
And I'm assuming that Justin's going to share that with the people that are applying for the cost share.
Mark?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, that's going to be important to the people that are applying for those cost shares, that they understand that cap.
All right, that sounds good, Justin. We really appreciate your time on those two green roof projects, bringing them back to us on multiple occasions. I know that was a lot of time input on your part, so we appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
And I hope they don't shoot the messenger when you're dealing with the applicants. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Boyer, I think we are back to you for an update on advancing green stormwater infrastructure in the city. Oh, wait, no, we've got Dale. I'm sorry, I skipped an item.
That's okay. You can skip me if you would like.
Oh, no, Dale, it's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Hopefully you can hear me and can soon see my presentation.
Yeah, we got it, Dale. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. So we'll jump right in. I know we're running a little short on time. February project review for the Drainage Assistance Program. Just a quick background on the Drainage Assistance Program for new members. The city's program for assisting private property owners with private drainage issues that contain some form of public runoff that result in severe erosion, structural flooding, or some type of street flooding. So that's sort of the program in a nutshell. Funded the past couple years at $1.5 million, and the projects are fully funded with the dedication of a permanent public drainage easement. So just a quick overview of the presentation. We look through the approved projects, what's coming up in pending projects, where these new projects are, presenting 2 projects today. Look at the projects in themselves and then their funding and overview. So to date, fiscal year 21, we've had 6 approved projects: Cambridge Woods Way, Newbold Street, Fairley Place, East Jameson, Hunting Ridge Road, and Beaver Dam Road. You can see the values of each of those projects, the budgets for each of those projects out to the side, totaling $910,000 of the $1.5 million annual budget, leaving the Drainage Assistance Program with $590,000 left to date. Quick look at the pending project list. Hopefully in the back of my material you have the full list of some 90 some projects. Top 25 here. Today we'll be looking at the top 2, Alamance Drive, actually 3410 Alamance Drive, and Northbrook Drive. One's at Crabtree Creek, one's in Mine Creek, 2 different council districts, E and A. These are actually, if you remember from the previous presentation of drainage assistance projects back in December, neither of these 2 projects actually showed up on that pending list. They're new projects that mostly made aware of later in November and into December. Project locations for the 2 projects: 810 Northbrook Drive, just north of 440, the Beltline. They're on Mine Creek, not long before it gets into Crabtree Creek, and then 3410 Alamance Drive, just inside the Beltline, draining directly to Crabtree Creek. Taking a little closer look at 3410 Alamance Drive, inside the Beltline, near the intersection of Alamance and Forsyth Street. If you're familiar with the area, street drainage in this location exits the right-of-way on Alamance Drive through a 24-inch pipe, flowing then into a 12-inch pipe on private property, running either right under the edge or slightly beneath the structure located there at 3410 Alamance Drive. Plat date for that property, 1972. The home was actually, it was built in 1973. You can see, this will be maybe a topic of discussion. You can see once that system leaves 3410 Alamance Drive, it continues across private property with a couple more bends and pipe changes in size before that system ultimately gets back into the right-of-way of Forsyth Street. So what they're experiencing is structural flooding occurring frequently, documentation of at least sort of 6 or 7 times of structural flooding since June of 2020. So water gushing around the edge of the house, flowing into the workspace and then into the lower living area of the property at 3410 Alamance Drive. So you see a couple pictures of the water rushing sort of around the edge of the house. This is the door sort of into this workspace, workshop and living space in the basement. Proposed project. This one's going to be a little bit unique. We'll probably need to do some type of analysis or feasibility study to see a preferred alternate route, whether that may be going back along Forsyth Street, or adjacent properties, or the drive. We may potentially utilizing the driveway of 3410 Alamance Drive. So the typical sort of plan where I show a proposed pipe is not on here. I think that we'll need some more information in terms of surveying and analysis of the downstream system to determine fully pipe sizing and realignment possibilities for this project. Okay, so the next one is 810 Northbrook Drive, built in 1990, platted in 1988. Home is located pretty much on top of the bank of this tributary to Mine Creek, just downstream of Brooks Elementary School, if you're familiar with this area. So looking at the picture, you know, a question might be asked, do we take in consideration the distance from the erosion to the deck? We typically do not. It's usually the distance of the erosion to the foundation of the home. And in this particular instance, that erosion is within 5 feet of the foundation underneath the deck here to that location. Preliminary indication indicates that this drainage way is not regulated, a regulated stream, a blue line stream. So we feel that we have the ability to, sorry for this 24 inch, that's an error. There should be a slight relocation of this unnamed drainage way further away from the house, hopefully with minimal stabilization, more sloping and vegetation without the need of any sort of hardened structure. That's the two projects. Funding, impacts and overview. 3410 Alamance Drive, funding of $335,000 for the project, and 810 Northbrook Drive at $95,000, with a total estimated project cost for this period of $430,000. That would, if approved, if recommended for approval, and if approved by council, would leave the Drainage Assistance Program with $160,000 left for fiscal year 21. So with that kind of runs through my presentation. I know I went through pretty quickly. Feel free to ask any questions, or I'm happy to answer those now.
It's Mark. Couple observations, Dale. And that last one, you said that's not a jurisdictional stream, so it doesn't have stream buffers on it?
Correct. That's our preliminary finding. You know, look, based on the USGS maps and the soil survey maps, it is not shown on either one of those maps, which are generally our first pass to determine if it's a buffered stream. We have not made a DEQ stream call yet, but our feeling is that it's not jurisdictional and not subject to the buffer rules.
Okay. And my thought on that was that if it had been a buffered stream, they probably wouldn't have built that there, but it always bothers me to see somebody build right on top of a creek, and then where the city is paying out money to fix that short-sightedness. Can we go back to the overhead view of the first one?
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to keep beating the same drum, but I'm looking at the situation. We've got a 24-inch pipe coming off of the public right-of-way, and the builder or property owner installed a 12-inch pipe below that. To me, you know, again, somebody's being short-sighted, and the city is paying up for that. I hate to see that happening. I mean, I don't think our policy has any way of addressing that, but, you know, my perspective is that anybody wants to get a free pipe system, they put in something way undersized and then complain to the city and have the city upsize it for them. We need to find a way around fixing people's short-sightedness.
Yeah, and Mark, I completely agree with that statement. This instance may be a little bit unique in the fact that I believe the 12-inch pipe was there prior to the 24-inch pipe that was installed on Alamance Drive when the city did curb and gutter on Alamance Drive in, I believe it's 2005.
Okay, well, I feel better about that. Thanks for that observation.
Right. So with the 12-inch, I'm pretty sure was already there and existing, and, you know, sort of without curb and gutter, sheet flow, and I believe water may have gone in a little bit, wasn't concentrated to one point of discharge.
Right. Good observation.
Dale, on that Alamance Drive project, will you have to work with adjacent property owners, or are there already drainage easements in place to work on that infrastructure?
If we ultimately follow the similar route of the existing infrastructure, we would have to work with downstream property owners, which we've already made contact with the first property owner downstream. And actually I have spoken in the past with the next property downstream. So if following sort of the same alignment, we would have to work with both of those property owners.
Gotcha. And just out of curiosity, what does that look like? Sort of, what do we need, or does the city need written approval, easement access, that sort of thing with downstream property owners in that scenario?
Yes. So we would obtain through dedication public drainage easements through any other properties that we needed to complete the project or to mitigate the flooding issues. And not unlike other projects where we've had similar situations, we engage the property owners, speak to the value of potentially dedicating the public drainage easement to the city for long-term maintenance and ownership, which would otherwise be private and their responsibility to own and maintain.
Yeah, I'm seeing a 24 going to a 15 downstream in a couple of places. That's going to be a little challenging.
It will prove to be a little bit challenging. I think that's why you see a generally higher price tag of $335,000 for this project than sort of a straight 24-inch pipe along beside the house. There's probably some downstream improvements that will need to be made.
All right. Does anyone would anyone prefer to vote for these separately? My first thought is to vote for do a vote together for both projects. Is there any reason not to do that right now? All right, I will make a motion to approve both of these drainage assistance projects that have been presented today. Is there a second? Got a second, David, and all in favor? Any opposed? All right, that one passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Dale. I really appreciate your time on that.
Yep, thank you all very much.
All right, Mr. Boyer, I believe it's now your time again to cover green infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure.
As well as Mr. Senior, I would like to make an offer or suggestion, though, in the interest of time. We intended to just give a few minutes of an update on where we are in our work with the GSI committee. We could make that an email written report and make up some time for the remaining agenda item.
I don't have any problem with that. How does that suit the other members of the commission?
I'm fine with that.
All right, that sounds good. We'll do that, Kevin. Thank you. All right, so we're moving ahead to Scott Bryant now for an overview of the city's stormwater utility fee.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good afternoon, everyone. You all are doing well. Kelly's going to pull up our presentation. Kelly, Daniel, and I are going to present this, and thanks for this opportunity. Would like to give a thanks to Reverend Taylor. His questioning at our January meeting really prompted us to put together this presentation as an update on the city's stormwater utility, and I've enjoyed doing it. Kelly has as well, so thank you, Reverend Taylor, for that, and for Commission for your support for us in the stormwater utility. So we're going to go through that today. First, before we get started, though, I've pulled a few quick interesting highlights for you from the Western Kentucky University 2020 Stormwater Utility Survey. I was not even aware of some of these facts. There are more than 1,800 stormwater utilities now in the United States, at least 29 in Canada. And North Carolina has at least 84. So 41 states have a form of a stormwater utility in place, and we're excited here in Raleigh to have had ours in place since 2004. But Kelly, let's get started. First off, we'd like to start our presentations with a reminder of our stormwater mission, and that is to manage stormwater to preserve and protect life, support healthy natural resources, and complement sustainable growth for the community. So when we think about the stormwater utility, it is designed to help us to accomplish that mission. And again, thank you, Stormwater Commission, for being a key part of that success. Next slide. You all have likely seen our circles of activities here before, everything from outreach and engagement to watershed planning to drainage system maintenance, all the way around there. If you come full circle, utility and financial management. So we're going to focus on that part of the equation today, and it really provides the financing to support all of the activities of the stormwater utility. So in sum, the stormwater utility and fee is the primary mechanism and source of revenue that supports all of Raleigh stormwater services. Next slide. So here's our agenda for today. I'm going to cover some highlights of the overview and then turn to Kelly to talk about our utility customer support and how we manage impervious area and our billing system. And then we'll wrap up with some questions and discussion. Okay, Kelly? So we'll start with the overview of the utility fee. Okay, as we had a chance to speak briefly in January, impervious area is the basis for the utility fee. So if we think about our water bills, that's fairly straightforward. How much water we use is essentially how much we're charged. Use more water, higher bill. Same thing with electricity. I've got my lamp right here. The more electrical resources that we use, the higher our bill will be, and so on. And conversely, the lower electricity that we use, the lower our bill will be, and same thing with water. For stormwater, impervious area is the basis, and what we find is that as impervious area goes up, the quantity of runoff increases. As impervious area goes up, the quality of runoff decreases. So both of those things we're trying to address with stormwater management, controlling, managing the quantity of runoff, both in terms of peak volume, and as well as improve the quality of that runoff. Those pollutants that are in that stormwater runoff, we want to capture, treat those, and remove those from the receiving waters as much as possible. So impervious area is the basis for our utility fee. Next slide. And here's how that works. So what is the billing units? The billing unit for the stormwater utility fee is what we in Raleigh call the SFEU. That stands for Single Family Equivalent Unit. Really, even more than that, is the Single Family Residential Equivalent Unit. So that's our SFEU. Many of those 1,000 or more stormwater utilities across the nation use the term ERU for Equivalent Residential Unit as their stormwater billing unit. That's the same idea as our Raleigh SFEU. Next slide. And what does that represent? So that is the single family equivalent unit. That's the typical impervious area for a single family residential property. In our case here in Raleigh, that would be the house footprint, the driveways, any sidewalks, any impervious features upon a single family property. The average amount of that in terms of square footage is the SFEU. And here in Raleigh, that calculation that was done prior to the stormwater utility in place in 2004 came up with 2,260 square feet of impervious area. So one single family equivalent unit, other cities may call this one ERU. One SFEU is 2,260 square feet of impervious area. So that is the billing unit. That's the same basis for billing both residential and non-residential. We call those categories residential and commercial here in Raleigh. Next slide. On the single family side, so we actually have 5 tiers based on the amount of impervious surface. So you can, your impervious surface for a single family property can be within these ranges, and you essentially receive it's a flat fee for that given tier. So for example, tier 1, our first tier goes from 400 square feet to 1,000 square feet. That charge is actually less. That's actually less than one SFEU. $2.20 a month is the current rate. Tier 2 is our average tier, and that's where that 2,2260 falls. So from 1,001 to 3,870 square feet, that's our average rate, and that's the rate we're often talking about when we're thinking about potentially adjusting the charge. We're looking often at that $5, and it's currently $5.50 a month. That's our average SFEU. It ramps on up as high as in tier 4 to $15.95 a month, and that's between 6621 and 9,500 square feet. More than 9,500 square feet, if there's more than 9,500 square feet of impervious area upon a single family, it is billed as a commercial property, and we're going to look at that next. So here's what we do for commercial properties. And this would be for any single family residential more than 9,500, and then all other properties. So when we say commercial, it's really non-single family residential. It can be multifamily, governmental, schools, commercial, nonprofit, any other property with impervious area more than 400 square feet. So what we do, $5.50 per month per 2260 square feet. And we're going to show you this calculation on the next slide. Here we go. So here's an example commercial property. I asked Kelly to find sort of the typical commercial property. There are a wide range of, as you might imagine. This is not uncommon here. So in this case, this property has 47,000, just over 47,000 square feet of impervious area. Its current monthly fee is almost $115, so $115 a month. And you can see, just for reference, we're going to come back to you next month and talk more about rates and levels of service. But those, so we'll probably share this again with you next month. But those are would be the effects of any changes in the rate. Kelly, let's pull up the next part of this. Here's how the calculation goes. So there is a little bit of math in this presentation. I know there wasn't math in the earlier presentation, but this math is simple. I think I can even do it. So here's the way it works. 47,303 square feet. We divide that by 2,260 square feet, which is per SFEU. And we round that to the nearest tenth. So it's 20.9 single family equivalent units. So the bill is then 20.9 times the current average rate, which is now $5.50 a month. And that gives us that $114.95 a month for that property, or for any property that has exactly that amount. That's also an annual fee of almost $1,400. Next slide. Here's an even larger commercial property. I just want to give you this for reference here. This one actually has 1.9 million square feet of impervious area. And you can see the monthly range there is over $4,600, almost $4,700. So that's a monthly charge. So this is just to give you some idea of the fees for various properties. Next. As we've mentioned, this commercial category also applies to schools or any other properties that are non-single family. Here's a school property. This happens to be Carroll Middle School. It has 320,944 square feet of impervious area. You see the school building footprints, roadways, parking lots, other impervious features on that property. Current monthly fee for a situation like this is almost $800 a month. Next. So what is our breakdown? There's lots of numbers on this chart here, but the key takeaway is that the commercial category represents about 2/3 of our single family equivalent units, or our SFEU. So 2/3 of our total billing is in the commercial category. About 1/3 is in the single family residential. Now on this chart here, so in blue is the commercial category, and the red is the tier 2 or the average single family category. Total impervious square feet, this is pretty mind-boggling, 912 million square feet across Raleigh. You can check the various numbers there. We could go into that. We have more than 130,000 accounts that we manage and work with, and Kelly and his team do a great job. Thankfully, they don't all call every day. We'd be pretty busy, but they do a great job administering the fee for those customers. About 96% of our total stormwater revenue is from utility fee revenue. We have a few other sources, permitting fees, a very minor amount of interest, but by and large, 96% of our revenue is from the stormwater utility fee. Next slide. Here's a snapshot of Raleigh's stormwater fee over time. Again, initiated in 2004, and the initial average single-family rate was $4 a month at that point in time. That stayed in place for a number of years until 2017, when it was adjusted by City Council for a higher level of service. Beginning in fiscal year 17, it went from $4 to $5. Just the past year has gone now to $5.50. And so, again, we'll be coming back to you with some ideas for fiscal year 22 at the next meeting. But our current plan right now is to maintain that current rate, but we do have options to share with you as well. Next slide. So how does Raleigh's monthly fee compare to others? Majority of other cities on this slide here are from North Carolina, so the lighter blue colors are North Carolina cities. So you can see we're somewhat middle of the pack. The darker blue in this case are representative Southeast capital cities with utilities. So you see Columbia, South Carolina, actually there on the chart has a monthly fee of almost $12. So it's wide ranging. You see within North Carolina, city of Charlotte's fees are among the leading fees currently in North Carolina. But we're again right there, strong in the middle of the pack, $5.50 a month. Next. Thank you for that opportunity. At this point, I'm going to get this to Kelly. Again, Kelly, Jerome, and Allison and their team do a fantastic job administering the stormwater utility, providing all the resources for us for all of these things that we're talking about, including rainwater rewards and drainage assistance and capital projects and everything that we bring to you. So Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you, Commission.
Thank you, Scott.
Quick question.
Short on time, so I'm going to try my best to go through this as quick as possible. With our stormwater utility program, we have what is a stormwater, we call a stormwater application. We got a database, and there's an application that is connected to that database that lets us manage all the parcels, so to speak, in the city of Raleigh and the impervious that they have. Like Scott said, alluded to, there's around 131,000 properties in Raleigh that we manage impervious on and keep up with that. And our stormwater application there, as you can see in the middle of the screen, is connected to several different other programs. We have InterGov, which is our new City of Raleigh permitting and plans review program. We get information out of that, comes into our stormwater application. Wake County, we get GIS, parcel, and deed information to come from there. CCD billing, that's our billing, the city's billing software. We're connected with that, obviously, so we can bill on water accounts or send out stormwater only accounts billing as well. And also we use CityWorks to handle our customer requests or call in maybe complaints about the stormwater fee. We enter that. And these all things are linked together, mostly in nightly reports that come and updates the software of impervious area or property information or billing. Now, impervious area capture, how do we get it? How do we get the impervious area, and where do we come up with it with? Well, number one is permits. If someone comes to the city of Raleigh and gets wants to build a house, they got to fill out a permit. On the permit application, ask them how much impervious area is going to be added there. That's also reviewed by our plans reviewer to make sure it's correct. And what happens is that comes over to our application as a pending record. And when the final happens on that property, let's say it's a single family, when the final happens, that gets turned over into a current record and goes over into our billing system to bill. Also GIS information. We get aerial photos. The city does aerial photos every year of the whole city. And we have those for record and review, but only a quarter of the city is done, planimetric data is done 1 quarter each year. So that updates each property every 4 years with the planimetric data to update the impervious on the lot. Also manual, as you can imagine, we can go out there and do site visits. Matter of fact, I just did one the other day. We go and do site visits and do some measurements. And also we can use the GIS tools that on Wake County and other applications to measure impervious area. In our stormwater application, it says, as you can say, probably mostly anything that has an account. It has account IDs, it has account status where it's active or inactive. The billing amounts, the SFU amounts, whether it's a commercial property or residential, the address, the tier it is, and also the property information like real estate IDs and PIN numbers. We also have a section, obviously, where we keep up with an impervious area. We have keeps up with the total amount that's on the property. If the property has any credited impervious area, maybe for MPDES or some kind of stormwater control device that's on the property, it can be credited. And also then would be a billable amount of impervious area. We have impervious history. If you can look there to the right, that's a history of one of them changing over years. And also the status, where it's a current or replaced history. And we also have an impervious breakdown. I believe that might be in a different slide, but impervious breakdown of what the impervious area is. How much is the building? How much is parking? How much is a miscellaneous or whatever the case may be. Also, we have the ability to take this impervious area and do what we call apportionment. We do this many times when you have maybe, let's say, a duplex in this case. Maybe a property owner wants the tenants to pay for it and they have water meters there, and we can split that payment between the two tenants there, whether it be equally, such as this one, to be 50% each, or sometimes especially with commercial properties, maybe one building is bigger than the other ones on the property, and therefore they should be paying a higher amount of the impervious or stormwater fee. And we can weight it out. We can make one be 80% and the other one 20% if needed. Also, we have the ability to do credits, fee credits. For instance, if you look there to the right, we can do MPDES credits, on-site credits, upstream credits currently. And we also have the ability to, if only a portion of the property is drained into a stormwater device and another portion of the property is not, we can actually break that portion out and give a credit to the one that is draining to the device, and the part that's not credit that portion. Another thing we developed, and thanking our GIS IT team, they helped us create this online stormwater fee application for customers. So they can go to our website and click on a link and bring this application up, and they can type in their address, or you can type in any address in the city, and bring up some rudimentary information on the property, the address and how much impervious area is there, the billing, whether it's commercial or residential, what tier it is, how much the fee is being charged for this property, and the breakdown of the impervious there, like this one's showing building, sidewalks, and parking. So that's a good benefit we got. I think we started that back in September this past year. And for our utility billing system, when we send our impervious area over to the customer care and billing system, which we call CCMB, that system also has obviously stuff like the person and the contact information, the financials, the balances that are on the account, the service agreements, the billing information and billing history. That way, which is great, so we can go back and make any changes needed to if we see something wrong with the account. And also the premise or property information it has on it as well as the billing units. Now, the stormwater utility fee collection rate over the last 7 or a little more years, as you can see, is doing pretty well. In talking with many stormwater utilities over the state and nation, they say that we get a really good return on our collection rate. As you can see, we're in the range over the last 7 years from like 95 and close to a half to 97.5% or so. And this year so far, FY21, even with the pandemic and everything going on, it's 96.2%. So, but we're going to continue to track that as we go along in FY21. I will say as a caveat, probably one of the main reasons that our collection rate is as high as it is when the utility was started, council passed an ordinance where when a customer pays for their bill, the first thing taken out of the payment is the stormwater utility fee. So that would be one of the reasons that the collection is so high. Another thing that's been happening, especially this year with the pandemic that's going on, we'll give you an update on this. This is a utility payment assistance program for customers. So the city council this past year set aside $200,000 out of the city's general fund to assist customers. So far, 605 customers have been assisted, which is an amount of $143,480. Now, that's not broken down. That's not just stormwater itself, but that's through all the services, water, sewer, solid waste recycling, and stormwater. One of the caveats is you have to have a water account to be eligible. And the same thing with Wake Helps as well. You have to have a water account to be eligible for this, but Wake Helps has helped city customers, 1,256 customers, and given 351,455.53 so far this year since the pandemic. And also, and we've had this for many years, but also we utilize this year as well. There's payment plans, or payment plans often. If a customer is behind on their payment, they can contact us and say, hey, I would like to set up a payment plan to kind of get this debt over and off me. And we can stop the late fees at that time and then set up a payment plan for that outstanding amount. And as long as they keep up the current payments that are going on, plus pay on the payment plan, we can hopefully get that paid off within 1 to 24 months. So that's three options for customer assistance right there. Now, I know we're getting a little short on time. I think it's actually over with. So I had some questions here that we wouldn't normally ask, but we'll go right straight to any questions or discussions you all may have.
Kelly and Scott, thanks for that. Are there any questions or comments from member of the commission for Kelly or Scott? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation, and could a copy of that be sent to the commission?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Evan, go ahead.
Very quickly, Scott, do you know what percent of, in those other cities that you put up as a comparison, are they comparable in terms of receiving the majority of their funding from their utility fee?
We could research that, but it's my understanding, yes, generally, Evan, that's the case, that ours is 95 or 96%. It's probably going to be pretty close to that for most of these. Pre-stormwater utilities, most cities had no choice but to fund from their general fund. But once that stormwater utility is established, dedicated, user fee, equitable enterprise operations, that normally provides the majority of funding. Not to say that there's also grant sources of funding or maybe loans or things like that that would provide additional. But by and large, probably in the 90+ percentile for, I'd say, for most of those utilities, if not close to 95%.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great question.
Scott and Kelly, I definitely learned a lot from that presentation, so thank you. Found it very informative, very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, so any other questions at this time for Scott or Kelly? And if not, we'll check in with Wayne and see if there's been any input on public comments. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions right now. So thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate your time on that. Wayne, anything on public comments?
No additional comments coming in through the chat.
That sounds good. Thanks. Before we adjourn, other items that commission members would like to discuss, comments at this time? All right, well, thank you guys all for attending our February meeting. I move to adjourn. Is there a second? All right, got one from Mark Sr. All in favor? Great, thank you all very much. See you in March.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.